read. I am black history. Before Egypt I existed. Deep in the valley of Mother Africa I roamed, because that was my first home. I am black history. Settled the land, domesticated the animals, built pyramids and great cities everywhere I went. I am black history. Coal black, blue black, brown black, yellow black, red black, white black, all the colors come from me. I am black history. Before Abraham, before Moses, before Jesus, before the pyramids, I was here settling the earth. Tomb robbers, culture vultures lied about me, claimed I had no history, when I am the first fruits that our Creator had produced. I am black history. Resilient, gifted, blessed, survivor, teacher, builder. Greatness dwells in us, for we are the original children of the sacred dust. I am black history. Slavery tried to wipe out my beginning and create a new me for the benefit of others. Killed so many of my kin on those ships, in those dungeons, in that new land, with that whip, with that gun, with that racism. Separated me from my language, from my people, from hearing the sacred drums. Told me my God was their God. Beat me, mistreat me, rape my sister, my mother, my brother for sports. I am black history, still strong, still surviving any and everything that tries to weaken and destroy me. The lost fruits of Mother Africa that were scattered on those shores of Santo Domingo, Puerto Rico, Panama, India, Mexico, Trinidad, Guyana, just to name a few, will one day awaken and grasp the truth that Africa is their beginning roots. I am black history. Regardless of my current state, I was born great. And as it was in the beginning, so shall it be in the ending. I am black history. You are black history, with your accent, with your straight hair, with your light skin. Reclaim your heritage and get that denial out of your brain and break the chains. I am black history, and you are too. This is called New America. They keep trying to convince us that this is a new America. An America that truly follows the words of the Constitution, that all men are created equal. An America that is not saturated in deception and hypocrisy. An America that treats all its citizens with respect and dignity. Oh, America, with your pretty words that speak of democracy, while your actions have kept our people under your subjugation, kept the seeds of racism growing, kept decency on the run for those who you deem unworthy of the American dream. The new America is an angry America. Angry that someone would dare challenge them on American soil. Angry that they were caught unprepared and could not withstand the attack of others. The new America, where people of color still fear the police, still face opposition because of religious belief, still searching for justice, better housing, and a true bite up from the American pie. The new America is being sponsored by the makers of control and all their not-so-subtle components. America has been wounded. Her ego has been brought to the surface of consciousness, and she must now face an enemy who does not fear death, doesn't buy into the hype that America is invincible, doesn't mind shedding American blood on American soil, the new America is not so new after all. I was looking outside, I wrote this piece coming on one Sunday morning. I was up there on Atlantic Avenue by the men's shelter. And I said to myself, where has all the greatness gone? The homeless is not you, black man. The confused, the scared, the thug, the 3/5 of a man they tried to create. None of them are the true you. Black man, black king, you are the ruler of everything. Where has all the greatness gone? Is it being suppressed, oppressed, made to lie in wait, or victim of a diabolical plot to keep you stagnant, unsure of your abilities, and no faith in your God? Slavery hurt your generations greatly. Drugs, unemployment has been affecting you lately. Where has all your stamina gone? Have you forgotten just how strong you are? Or have they weakened you so much that you have given up? A hollow man is what you have been, always searching, always hurting, never really certain if you're going in the right direction. Where has all the greatness gone? Seeing many of you in your current state explains many of the problems that fall upon our race. Black man, it's time for you to rise and find a solution to stop the pollution of your natural strength, natural gifts. Time to stop pretending and not worrying about offending those who openly and secretly try to keep you down. You who named the stars and walk on this planet first, where has all your greatness gone? Your footsteps are not being followed by your children. Your sons seek to rise above you and not respect you. Your mate constantly puts more pressure on you. Society is always testing you. The streets are always challenging you. So many of you are unaware of your true history. So many of you don't know or refuse to know that you are the descendants of the first man, the first fruits that the Creator made in His image. Slavery survivors, inventors, mathematicians, gifted builders. When the world was new, there was nothing you could not do. Where has all your greatness gone? I hear those words in the faces of our children, our women. See us portrayed as criminals, servants, low life and no life on the television. I read the statistics of our death rate, of our prison fate. My soul weeps. My eyes sometimes stare in disbelief at the damage done to black men and other men of color. The children are watching, the ancestors are weeping, and the spirits keep repeating, where has all your greatness gone? I'm gonna leave you with this. It's called this Warriors. Where are the warriors? The battlefield has been stretched. The enemy has gained more strength. The people are still scattered in their unity. Where are the warriors? Seeds of Shaka, seeds of Malcolm, seeds of Denmark, of Hannibal, of Harriet, and all the others who carry the warrior seeds. Now is the time. Prepare yourself. Align yourself, for our people are still under attack. Our people are still disenchanted, still angry, still in search of dignity and respect. Where are the warriors? How come the drums stopped playing and no one noticed? How come we approach each other with caution instead of love? Warriors, have you been too subdued, duped into thinking that our race is not sinking into the depths of despair? Warriors, do you not hear the call in your soul from the ancestors, or see the pain in the lives of your people? See the pain in their faces. See the destruction in some of our neighborhoods. Warriors, the blood is calling. Will you answer the cries of the innocent, the cries of injustice, and the cries of those who have given up and accept their conditioning as normal? Warriors, our hope depends on the likes of you. How long will you remain dormant while racism and its crew flex themselves with arrogance and disdain for the nations of color? Where are the warriors? Is one in your home, in your heart, in your family, who is willing to stop the killing, willing to stop the onslaught, willing to not pretend that millennium slavery does not exist? Warrior, if you don't stand up, speak up, represent us, then everything that our ancestors fought and died for will have been in vain. Warriors, if you are here, stand for me. Make a sound for me. Let me see it in your face or hear the flames of your words. Warriors, I have been commissioned to write about our dreadful condition and remind you that now is the time. Now is the time. Like the sun, you must rise. Prepare yourself. Show yourself you are divinely protected. Where are the warriors?
Was that genius or was that genius? Was that genius or was that genius? What we have here before us. Okay, Professor Kaba, as we know him at City University, is certainly also a college professor. And what I have noticed about him personally is that he has a certain sensitivity to the learning needs of our Black children. And that's very, very important. I think they call it program instruction. But so many of our young people are bright, and we just don't know it. They don't even know it. And the brother has a certain sensitivity that allows him to enter their space. Because you know, as African people, we are multidimensional. We have a lot of identities. And we are very bright. As an instructor, one of the things I learned that I must not ever do is give multiple choice exams. Because our young sisters and brothers can tell you why every choice is the right choice. I'm saying there's a logic they have, all right, before it gets contaminated. Yes. And our brother has the ability, the capacity, the love, the knowledge, the skill, the competence to tap into their genius. So I'm not going to say anything else about the brother. What I'm going to do now, I'm going to ask the drummers and our young African children to escort our brother before us so that we can learn and love along with him our Africanness. Let's hear it. Drummers.
with Africans united and who are moving. I first would like to just stop for a moment, and I would like to thank the United African Movement in general for inviting me to be with you again. This is the first time I've been with you since the resurrection, the rebirth, and the renaissance of the United African Movement. And it is so good to be here. It's so good to have this energy, because you know it's lonely being African and conscious out there. It's real lonely. And so it's always good for us to get together this way and share this time to let us know that we're all in a struggle. The struggle continues, and it is not over until we win. And I would really be remiss if in being here this way, I did not just stop, just very briefly, and to honor and to respect our sister Clara Jones. Because it was really here in the United African Movement that I got a chance to meet and to know Sister Clara. And since the last time I've had a chance and the honor to speak here, our sister has joined the ancestors. And I always pay homage and honor to foot soldiers. Because although generals direct us, it's the foot soldiers that win the war. And I know that Sister Clara loved us very much. And I know that there were things that she told me that made me feel so good. When time was that you wonder what it's all about, and you know, we all get there. At those moments where we wonder what the struggle's about, is it all worth it? Is it all going to turn out? It was Sister Clara that, for some reason or other, always was able to call and to reassure us. And I know on a personal level, when she became part of the type of support that she gave us weekly, not just in terms of her spirit, not just in terms of her emotion, but she also put her money where her voice was. And she gave very generously to us. And that I always appreciated and remembered. And so I'd like to just pay homage, and I know we've done libation, but I just want to call upon the spirit of our Sister Clara, because on so many occasions she talked to us about how she wanted things to happen a certain way. And I know that she watches and she guides us and she keeps us strong during these times. So it's to Sister Clara that we offer this evening's presentation, because she loved us and our children, we as a people, and she was very proud. And just the memories that she shared with us, once we invoke her name and we bring her into the room, she's with us. And so I'm happy to invite Clara in to be with us this evening.
Ashe.
Ashe. Brothers and sisters, it's a struggle out here. But it's a worthy struggle. It's a very worthy struggle. In fact, our ancestors made Kepra, the dung beetle, the symbol of the process of life, the process of becoming. Our ancestors were geniuses. They were absolutely brilliant. And every day that I get a chance to study our history and to study our culture, I get a deeper understanding of what our brother, Dr. Asa Hilliard, none before, told us, and what our other brother, Dr. Jacob Carruthers, told us about what he called African deep thought. African deep thought being that type of thought that unless you're there, you can't think it. And it doesn't take a PhD or an MA or an MS or any other of those alphabet letters we put after our names that gives you that African deep thought. It's one with nature. If you want to look what the answer is, nature has all the answers right in front of us, and all you got to do is tap into it. And our ancestors knew how to do it. And I think that one of our challenges is that we are not doing it. We're looking to outside sources and to machines and everything else for answers that nature provides for us. We go to the doctor and we get all these different prescriptions and all these different medicines and everything else. And all you have to do is just look at that black cat that gets sick and watch what the black cat does when the black cat gets sick, and you'll notice that
The cat will rest, it'll drink a lot of water, and it'll drink green things. And it heals itself. Don't get a doctor. In fact, animals get sicker when they go to the veterinarian. They're better off by themselves. Well, don't we get sicker? We're better off just healing ourselves. But we have been bitten by the vampire, and once bitten by the vampire, we act like the vampire. And much of what we seek becomes that which we watch the vampire do.
That's true.
And this is what our society has become.
Yeah.
And so the United African Movement, headed by our brother, Attorney Maddox, probably, I say it all the time, I say it privately, I've said it to him personally. He is the only person I would want to follow in 2008. And the reason why I say that is because brother has battle scars. Because I see too many people out here talking about the battle that they've been waging, but they don't have battle scars. And I want to know what kind of battle you can be in that you don't have scars. You know what I'm saying? And I know that our brother has battle scars and he's shown them. But what's happening is that he has healed himself, and our support of him also heals him. And so it's important that we understand the real deal and what it is that we have to do for our children and for our people and for the curriculum that we've been working on. And this is a very real curriculum. And if I could leave anything with you this evening, if there's any message, as simple as it may be, it would be that there is a curriculum of thinking for African peoples. It's a universal principle governed by the laws of Ma'at, here before us to follow. It has nothing to do with going to school. It has nothing to do with passing tests. It has to do with becoming conscious of who you are within the cosmic reality. And Kepler becomes the symbol of that because Kepler is a dung beetle who lives from eating cow dung. Eating feces of Hekeru, Hathor. And think of the symbolism that our ancestors were giving us. A dung beetle. A beetle that eats feces. As probably one of the most important symbols of life. You can see how dynamic they were because they took one of the lowliest, what we might consider one of the lowliest creatures, and made them a symbol of a process of life. The dung beetle will lay its eggs, put them in dung, and the baby beetles will come forward, eating through the dung to light as the mother rolls the dung along the Hapi or the Nile River. That's the process of life. Not just of the dung beetle, but of the process of life coming into existence, what preserves it and keeps it living, and then what takes it away. Dung. Think of that symbolism as an African people. Haven't we had to eat dung for the past 400 years? And yet that has been our life. There are times coming upon the world now. There's going to be a lot of dung out there.
You're right.
If you can sense it, it's sort of kind of hit the fan already.
Oh, yeah.
It's spreading all over now. Not just in our community, but in all the communities. Yeah, because you see, you hear people say, it's not supposed to happen here.
That's what they say.
But it is. So if it's happening here, you better watch out.
That's right.
And if you want to find out how to deal with all that dung that's being flung in your neighborhood, you're going to have to come to the masters of those who have been able to deflect the dung, and that has been us for the past 400 years.
Make that rain, brother.
Because there has not been one thing that could happen to a human being that has not happened to us as a human being. And yet, as Maya Angelou says, and still we rise. All that dung. So that our ancestors were teaching us something in their prophecy by saying that don't curse the wind that sends the dung, bless it. Because for every time you have to deal with it, it perfects your character. So don't curse the bad times. Because the bad times actually is what's shaping your character. And that's a very important process because, and I think that this was the secret of our ancestors, who were able to deal with those types of situations, because clearly I am shamed to even think about talking about hard times, considering what our ancestors went through. Every morning that I wake up, I call upon my hero, Harriet Tubman. And I ask not that the spirit of Harriet Tubman enter me, but that whatever spirit entered Harriet, let that spirit enter me. And so that when I even think about talking about how rough times are, Harriet comes to me and says, hush your mouth. You have no right to speak. Here I am, 93 years old, up in Auburn, New York, with a collection plate, collecting money for a senior citizens home that I'm running. The government hasn't paid me for all that I did, because I'm one of the heroes of the Civil War. That's what Harriet tells me. That's right. I'm one of the heroes. Because you see, all them other folk could have hid behind their color, but I couldn't hide behind my color, so I used to put all sorts of masks, and I used to go, people didn't even know who I was. That's right. So that when you think in terms of talking about hard times as a people, you just think about all of the dung that our ancestors have been through that help us along this struggle, that help us along what we have actually been through as a people. And as I talk to our people, I explain to them that they are the best of the best. And I don't say it in the sense that because of the nature of the complexion of your skin, you are excellent. I say because of the conditions that people have put you through, despite and in spite of being able to still I rise, they have made us superior.
Right.
We didn't say make us superior. What they did to us, and despite what we've been able to do, made us superior. And the fact that we could be in this room right now and do what we're doing right now is evidence of that miracle that our ancestors gave us.
Yes, right.
And so in the morning when I wake up, I can understand why the elder sister on the elevator says, bless God for allowing me to wake up. Because today is ours, but tomorrow is promised to nobody. And the fact that we're in this room right now, no matter what our age, no matter how young, no matter how elder we may be, just the fact that we're here breathing is a gift. And so all that dung that's flying around, all of that is icing on the cake. Because our first blessing was that we woke up this morning. And even if you have a bad day, it's a good day, because at least you're alive to experience it. And every day as an African people that we're able to do this. I tell our children, understand that we are God having a human experience. Don't look for it out there. Don't even look for it in here. You are God having a human experience. Our Creator, He, she, that's another thing. Come on, brother, we gotta get real. I can't fathom a male God alone. Man, I can't see it. That bothers me. That gives me what's called cognitive dissonance. I know the truth, and I can't deal with the fact that I could perceive a God being only a male. I can't see that. It is both male and female, divinely created. And what makes that creator so unique is that it is the only essence that is in fact both male and female that exists. And so what this creator did is that in order to procreate him herself, they divided themselves into male and female of all different concepts. Because that's the parable behind Noah's Ark. Because that is a good book. It's a good book because it's our book. It was just rewritten by the wrong people, didn't know what they were talking about. Because you know the Greeks don't have a language. The Rosetta Stone was 3 different versions of Kemetic language, that the last one was the only one the Greeks could understand, so they took that. And that became classical Greek. They added some things to it. But classical Greek is another form of Egyptian writing that the Greeks took, and now when you decipher the Rosetta Stone, they tell you that the top part is hieroglyphs, the middle part is hieratic demotic, and the last part is classical Greek. That linguistically is impossible. Because how can you decipher a language that you don't speak into a language you don't understand. Now somebody should have asked that question. But when you're bit by the vampire, Dracula rules. He don't want to suck your blood in the first place. So he injects the parasite of ignorance into us, so we don't even know who we are. So that book that we call the Bible was a book, rewritten version of the pyramid text, the coffin text, and the book of the coming forth, the day by night, called by them the book of the dead, because they found it amongst the dead. They call it the book of the dead because they found it amongst the dead. That's like us going into a hotel and we call the Gideon Bible the book of the hotel. Because we find it in the hotel. So we're going to call the Gideon Bible the book of the hotel. As we go deeper and deeper into our history and our culture, brothers and sisters, there is such a phenomenal power. But you see, if someone creates an illusion and you embrace that illusion as a reality, it is a reality. It's your reality. It's your reality. It's an illusion, but if you make it real, it's your reality. And this is what we have faced historically throughout our time. So when we talk to our children, we explain to them, we're not talking about just attempting to say you're the best of the best to make you feel good. This is a tribe, and it succeeded in making us and carving us through Kepler the best of the best. And I take them through the process. Because you don't really have to tell them, you just take them through the process. What happens when someone comes into your community? You're out there playing with your friends, or you're going out to get water, or you're chopping wood, or you're having fun as a child does, and someone comes that you don't even know, don't even look. And they never saw no one look like that. They come pull you, put you in chains, hurt you. You're a child. Just that alone is an experience that only the best of the best could have survived. That beating, the fear of being yanked from your community where you feel comfortable. And I describe it to the children as your playground. Either in your schools or in your home, someone just come and yank you. Yet you're able to survive that. And then they take you and they drag you from one part of your country to another part of your country with chains on, with neck brace on, with all sorts of stuff on. They drag you across them. In order to survive being pulled across like that, only the best of the best could have survived that. And then after they get you over to the other side, they put you in a dungeon. And they put you up upon each other. You have never lived like this in your life before. And until it's time to ship you, which you don't know, you have to survive that. Only the best of the best could have survived that. They then take you and put you in a hole of a ship, of which you've never seen before, you don't know. You don't know the people who put you there. The people who put you there you never saw before, you don't know them. You ain't seen your parents in a couple of weeks. You haven't seen your auntie, your grandmother. You're scared. You're hurt. And for a number of weeks, you're on this boat being treated to some of the most inhumane conditions that a human being could be exposed to. Only the best of the best could have survived that. We're not talking about superiority or inferiority. We're talking about the power of survival. The dung that you got to eat in order to perfect your character. You become better through this process. This is no imagination. This is just talking through this and thinking what people have gone through. And then after they get you here, you know you're going to try to break. And so they begin to torture you. They begin to beat you. They begin to do things to you that you could never imagine could happen to a human being. Yet despite and in spite of that, still you rise. You survive that. Only the best of the best could survive the torture, and then you're sold to a plantation to be told to do things you have never heard of before. You have never done before in this sense. And for hundreds of years, generations of you are passed down with this inhumane treatment, always wondering when it's going to end. I often think of the song by R. Kelly. And I often tell people, because I was part of a rites of passage program on Rikers Island. And I remember part of the program had a young brother stand up. You know, they had different parts of the program. One of it was for a song. And he stood up and he sang, "I Believe I Can Fly." And I respect the brother, but he didn't sound like R. Kelly. But it was in that droning, sad voice that for the first time I heard the words of the song from another perspective. Because as I looked out, as I heard the song, I was looking at a plantation with enslaved people on it. And for the first time, those words of "I believe I can fly," when you go home, listen to "I Believe I Can Fly" again. Think of those words as our ancestors on a plantation singing a song about what would happen if they ever got the wings to be able to fly, what they would do. Well, what they would do is who we are. We are their dreams. We have no right not to fulfill their dreams. So whatever other dung they're going to fling to us, we can handle it. Because if they could handle that, we certainly can handle this. And only the best of the best could have survived that. And then coming up into the 1900s, the civil rights movement, the struggle, the dogs, the fire hoses, that the water came out of the water hose so strong that it literally could rip the clothes off your back. And for those of you who were down there experienced that, you know what I'm saying because you went through it. Only the best of the best could have survived that. And now our children, after having been the ones that our brother Listerville Middleton said, "You were the first to read, the first to write, humanity sprang from your black seed." Now we're being told that we're illiterate. We can't pass the test. We can't learn. We are genetically inferior to the most inferior genetic people on the planet. In fact, they're so genetically inferior, when we flung our dung, that was our dung. Yet that dung is telling us we are dumb. And what's sad is that some of us are believing. You know, Harriet Tubman once said that her proudest moment was that she could say that she actually freed thousands of slaves. And she said her saddest moment was the fact she could have freed thousands more had they only known they were slaves. Go out there on Flatbush and Fulton. See, one of the things that Attorney Alden Matters taught me is that being a slave is a mental thing. I remember one time he was talking to us and he said that there were Africans that were on a plantation and never one day was a slave. They were prisoners.
That's right.
They were held in bondage against their will.
Yes.
Yet there were people walking up and down 125th Street who were slaves because mentally they had given in to the illusion that became their reality.
Right. They drank Kool-Aid.
I spent a number of years in the New York City Board of Education. This November 12th, I just hit year number 27. I'm in my 28th year. And I am the spook who sat by the classroom door. Because I've always seen my job as coming back to our community and reporting to you what I see happening. And what I'm observing now is something that I've said frequently. It's just reinforced constantly. And that is that the Board of Education, or the Department of Education, well, they're not failing. They're succeeding because their purpose is to miseducate our children. They know exactly what they're doing. And they're very good at it. I'm presently in a junior high school, and I'm working with 7th and 8th grade students that are, they're just absolutely brilliant. I mean, when I see them, you know, no matter what they do, although it may not be appropriate, within them I see a nemesis. You know what the pharaohs used to wear? I see them with scepters in their hands. And that's how I talk to them. See all this other stuff, the pants falling off the booty and the shoes untied and the hat on sideways and all this. See, I forego all that and I see royalty. And I speak to the royalty. And sometimes I even, when I can't get through to the royalty, I start talking to their ancestors. And I open up my conversation with the ancestors by saying, I know you know better. Because the ancestors do know better. Because if I talk to the child don't know better. Because if the child knew better, they would do better. It's the ancestor deep within them that I'm trying to pull out. From the recesses of their memories, from what is called in India, came from Africa, the Akashic field. From the waters of Nun, as our ancestors would call it, I'm trying to pull that ancestor up to take control over this young person because I know you know better. And when you talk to children like that, they sometimes stop and they say, yeah, I know better. And then I started having a dialogue with the ancestor because I know the ancestor know better. And this is what we have to start to do with our young people. Brothers and sisters, our young people, they're absolutely brilliant. Today and yesterday, our children were tortured in the 5th grade. They took what is called the language arts test. Next week, the 6th, 7th, and 8th grade is going to be tortured. Because they're going to sit for 90 minutes or 45 minutes or an hour, and they're being told that the very culmination of all the things that they know in reading is going to determine what type of intelligent child you are. When that does not in any way, shape, or form measure a human being's intelligence. There are 2 ways you pass a standardized test, and I teach children this. When you know the right answer, and when you know all the wrong answers. But you don't have to know the right answer to pass that test. And our children are being faced every day by this. They are the best of the best. They have the ability to do whatever it is that we need them to do. But we have to have the courage to tell them the truth.
Yes.
I'd like to say this, because we're really at the point where we can't really spare our words anymore. I honestly respect every religion that exists, but it's hurting us. It's hurting us because the interpretation that we have taken of these religions comes from someone else's perception of God.
Absolutely. Right.
They are involved in an angry and jealous God that grew up in an ice age. We come from a creator force where the medium temperature was 80 degrees and shit.
Yeah.
We come from a creative force that all around us, when the mango was ready, the Creator just let it fall in our hands. The bananas and the apples. We grew up with a psychological perception that we didn't have to hoard things because there were hundreds of them on the tree and none was going to go wrong. And if somebody came by that was hungry, take what you want. And because you knew you were going to come upon another tree down the road, you didn't take 100 off this tree because you knew you were going to get another 5 down the road. So selfishness and envy and jealousy never came upon you because you understood that reciprocity was in existence. So therefore, the creator of the original world was a loving, sharing, positive experience. People coming out of the Ice Age knew not this creator.
Right.
They came from an environment that said, if your best friend or even your wife is chasing that pig, don't kill the pig, just wait till they eat the pig and then eat them.
Yeah.
But then you eat the pig and them too. Fatten it up. And then eat your best friend. You don't believe me? Read a book called Man Eater.
Still doing it.
Still doing it.
Had a boy cook a woman the other day. Now you've been at it.
This is right in front of us, brothers and sisters, and yet we still cling to the belief systems of a people who built the belief systems, enslaved us, and Manifest Destiny said their God told them they had a right to do this.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And can I just drop the other shoe?
Yes, sir.
When we're talking about modern day Islam, I want to remind you that before you start taking sides, I'd like to remind you that the people that we today call Palestinians were yesterday's Philistines. And it was the Philistines that destroyed the African Canaanites and said that God told them they could do it. So before we take sides with anybody, keep in mind that Judaism is based in Atonism of ancient Egypt. Christianity is based on Aminism of ancient Egypt. And Islam is a combination of the two that the Moors of Africa brought to its highest point. Read Dr. Ben's work.
Right.
Just understand that Africa is the mother of the world's major religions.
Right.
And when the warlike mentality was thrust on us by these Europeans, what they did, they didn't understand the one concept of spirituality. So what they had to do was they had to take that one thought, that universe, that one word, and chop it up. So some of them took part of it, and their interpretation became what we today call Judaism. Another took another part and took it and made it Christianity. And some of them said, we don't want either, so we're going to blend them both. And now they say that they call it Islam. I have nothing against any faith system. You have a right to believe.
Right on.
But all I say is, if you're going to preach it, reach it.
That is right.
But don't preach one thing and then practice another. Don't you tell me that your God gives you right to destroy people.
Right.
Or that you have a right to put women under unequal terms. Because if you understood God, you'd understand that God is also a woman.
Right.
So when you enslave your woman, you're enslaving the other half of God. Don't tell me that about your religions. And you see, brothers and sisters, a lot of folk get very tight with me when we start talking about it, but that's okay.
You can't handle the truth.
Because the one thing I appreciate about Malcolm X is that Malcolm never taught us or told us what we wanted to hear. He told us what we had to hear. And he took that chance because he understood that the price of freedom is death.
Yeah.
And the day you will find your liberation is the day that you lose your fear of death. Now, I'm a human being. You have a right to have fear. That's a human emotion. You have a right to have fear, but you do not have any right not to have courage. Because courage is what negates fear, and then pretty soon you start acting courageously. And we have to get out into our community and start talking to our people in ways that they can understand. I respect your faith system. But just understand that underneath what you're looking at is an African philosophy. You know, it was Boukman, Haitian revolutionary from Jamaica.
Yeah.
Troublemaker, they said.
Yeah.
Freedom fighter to me. Troublemaker to them.
Yeah.
But that's the way it is. See, because Khalid Muhammad, he was the most loving man I ever knew. I love Khalid.
Yeah.
I often say that white folk need to hear what an angry black man sounds like.
Yeah.
You've been hearing that other stuff too long. You need to hear what a real man that's angry at you sound like.
Right.
He was a good doctor.
And the King College.
See, because I want to go to a good doctor. I want to go to a doctor that's going to say, you know something, you sick. You are sick. And I have the remedy for your sickness.
Right.
I don't want to go to the doctor that say, don't worry about that cancer going to go away. It's going to be all right. Don't worry about it. 2 months later, you dead.
Yeah.
I want to go to the doctor that say, no, man, you sick. And I got the remedy for it. Khalid was their doctor. But they didn't like the prescription of their doctor. Because they wanted to believe that everything was all right when nothing was right. And now they're living the repercussions of this.
Right.
Because what's happening over there in Iraq, another black land, by the way. Read African Presence, Early Asia. You see it.
Yeah.
Mesopotamia, Elam, Susa, Media, all that was black land.
Right.
Until those Ice Age people came.
Yeah.
See, they get upset with Dr. Jeffries when he starts talking about Ice Age people. Because all of a sudden they start getting ancient memories of where they came from. I don't want to be reminded of that stuff either. It's cold. When summertime comes, don't tell me about the winter. I want to know about the summertime. Brothers and sisters, we have to get to the point in our lives where we understand. There is a point now that we're just going to take a break. We're going to come back and I'm going to now flip the script and I'm going to talk to you about what our ancestors developed in terms of the cosmic reality. And in the 60s when we talked about black is beautiful, it wasn't just to make us feel good because they had told us for so long that it was bad, that actually black is beautiful because everything comes out of the black. Even starlight is nothing but coagulated blackness. Just like carbon creates a crystallized diamond, cosmic blackness creates the stars. They call them nanodiamonds. With that, our sister Geneva Buns. Hotel. I'll be back. Having spoken about what we spoke what we spoke about earlier, when we think about basic things that 2008 here in what we call the United States of America.
Home of the great.
And
Snakes of America.
you know, just understanding what we've experienced, what we're dealing with, what we should be able to understand, and where we should go from here. But particularly if I can just look to our children and understand our children and some of the things that our children should really understand. One of the things as an African people, as our research has gone forward, and there's no way that I personally could claim, I first extend, you know, much of who I am and what I am, my parents, of course, but I would be just remiss if I did not call upon the spirit and the guidance that Professor John Henry Clark gave me throughout my life.
Yeah.
And I think that probably, along with wonderful family and all those other pieces, outside of that, I think that one of my greatest fortunes was to have an elder brother, such as Professor Clark, take interest in a young brother. I've told the story many times before, but for those who may never have heard the story before, I just share it, and those that have heard it before, we can all just work together on this. But you know, John Henry Clark is my intellectual father. And I would also be equally remiss if I didn't call upon my intellectual mother, Dr. Charlotte McIntyre. That is a scholar that we many times do not call upon. And for those of us who have ever been in her presence understand her power and her down-to-earthness and her ability to bring warring factions together. And I've seen her do it. People who, for all intentions and purposes, may not get along, but she had the ability and the power and the maternal wisdom and the paternal power to bring these forces together. So Shashi McIntyre, I frequently call upon because of her dignity, her grace, her intelligence, and all that she did. But when I was in the 7th grade, 12 and a half years old, I grew up in the Amsterdam houses down by Lincoln Center. And like in all of our communities, we have conscious, what we call them old heads. When I might have been 9 and 10 years old, they were like 15, 16, 17. Serious brothers and sisters that took culture seriously, came from a long line of people, project bound, but clearly beyond the process. And they used to get a group of us together that they felt were conscious, or at least on the road. And prior to becoming a born-again African, my name was Booker T. Coleman. And they said, Booker T, wow, what a name. And I remember that, and I'm junior. My father's from Alabama. Tuskegee, Alabama, and went to Tuskegee. And my grandmother, his mother, and Booker T. Washington were friends. And it was through that friendship my father was named after him. And so then I inherited the name. That's why when I corrected my name, because I didn't change my name, I corrected it. When I corrected my name in 2002, my father had already transcended maybe 10 years. He had joined the ancestors. And I had to go into deep reflection with him to talk to him and to explain to him why I had to correct my name. And basically, when I come before our community such as this, and I speak to you of the parasite, I speak to you of the vampire, it is very difficult for me to speak to you of the vampire and then tell you that my name is a vampire's last name. And I got to a certain point as I got older that I had what's called cognitive dissonance. I had a problem with that, so I had to correct my name, and I had to go into what I would consider spiritual reflections with my father to explain to him why Booker T had to become Kaba Hiawatha Kamene. And what's funny is I did it legally. And it's funny that they took my name for free, and they made me pay $290 to get it back. But I will do anything to shed the vampire's name. So when I was Booker T. Coleman Jr., 7th grade, they brought me up to a place in Harlem. I don't know where it was. And I remember they sat us down in the room, and there was a man talking to us, to the group. There were elders, and there were young, and there was all of us were there. And I remember at the end, they brought the young people up to be introduced to this speaker. And when they got to me, they said, "This is Booker T. Coleman." And I remember, I'm speaking, of course, of Professor John Henry Clark. And they said, "This is Booker T. Coleman," and he looked at me. And I can honestly tell you that I had to look up to him. You know, physically speaking, he was a giant. But he was short of stature. But when I met him, I was shorter than him. And I had to look up to him. So I can honestly tell you, when I met him, I looked up to him. And he said, "Wow, Booker T, you're going to become a great teacher one day." And this is when I was 12 and a half years old. And he gave me my first homework assignment. A homework assignment that I give each and every one of my children and everyone else that I ever come in contact with. Because whatever it was that I felt was important comes to you the first time. And this is what Professor Clark said. He said, "I want you to go home, and I want you to look in the mirror, and I want you to tell that person you're looking at, 'I love you,' and mean it. Because if you can't do that, there's nothing I can do for you." And I've often thought about that as us as a people, searching for our ancestry and looking at ourselves and coming in contact with children that say when they get money, they want to fix their nose is too big. And I say, "Can you breathe through your nose?" They say, "Yeah." I said, "Well, it must be just the right size." I mean, if you're going to tell me you can't breathe through it, then I think we're going to fix it. But if you can breathe through it, then you're all right. And when I hear them call each other crispy and darky, I often tell them, "Well, you know something? Well, you better thank them crispy people, because if it weren't for them crispy people, you wouldn't be here." Because it was the darker the berry that was the sweeter the juice, that was able to absorb the sunlight that created human life on the planet in the first place. So you better go and get the thickest lip, widest nose, darkest complexion, kinkiest, nappiest hair person and tell them, "Thank you for letting me be here." Because we don't see this, we don't understand this. So melanin is something that our people should understand. You have to understand it from every perspective that you possibly can. When our ancestors wrote on the temple doors, "Know thyself," they were talking about knowing melanin. That's what they were talking about. Melanin comes down to earth in terms of a characteristic, an element, an atom that we call carbon. The blackness of the carbon atom. But in reality, that same carbon atom that crystallizes itself on the planet also exists in the cosmos. The cosmos, the universe, is black. Everything that you see in the cosmos comes out of the black. So in many ways, many of the secrets, if we want to call them that, because they're not secrets, and this is the wonderful thing about the legacy. You see, when we talk about the so-called mystery system of ancient Kemet or Egypt, we're really talking about a time when our ancestors had to code their words because infiltrators or Haibris, the ones who crossed over, were coming in and usurping the lands of Kemet. So they coded their words. They created codes. But if you go inside of Africa, into Ethiopia, where only us survive, only us exist, it's not secret. It's open to those who are willing and ready to accept the knowledge. The teacher appears when the student is ready. That has always been our legacy. We only coded it when outside people, who when we looked at them and saw how they conducted themselves, we knew that they would take advantage of the secrets of the universe, and that is exactly what they've done. One of the greatest things about our brother Malcolm X, there were many great things about him, but I think one of the things that made him so great, they call it alchemy. They make movies like Lord of the Rings and Harry Potter. Our children get all wrapped up in it, but they don't know that they're talking about our legacy of bringing the manipulations of elements and atoms and earth and sky and water and all the things that exist, manipulate them and create other things in the combinations of these things. There's something called the periodic table of elements, of which we all sweat when it's time to learn in chemistry class. But if I could teach that periodic table of elements, I wouldn't teach it as a table, I would teach it as an experience. And that's why sometimes we don't understand it, because we don't understand it within the context of how we should learn it. For instance, again, going back to what Dr. Yibo teaches us, there is only one entity that exists in the universe. There is only universe, one word, universe. And when Africans learned the universe, they learned the other cosmic realities of that one word, and then they replicated that universe and began to teach people of this universe in situations that today we call universe cities, universities. And this one word is called hydrogen.
That's right.
And everything that comes out is only multiplications and additions of that one word, that one nun, hydrogen. The sun's job all day long is to take and to fuse 4 hydrogen atoms. That's all the sun does, all day, all night. When they fuse 4 hydrogen atoms, they create 1 helium atom, which is number 2 on the periodic table, and a bit of what's called light and heat energy that comes down to Earth through Shu, Tefnut, Nut, and Geb, and creates organic life. Hydrogen, nitrogen, this is John G. Jackson teaching us this in the Introduction to African Civilizations. Chapter 1. Hydrogen, nitrogen, and oxygen are 3 atoms that you can only put no more than 4 of them together. You put 2 parts hydrogen, 1 part oxygen, you have H2O, you have water. You put 2 parts hydrogen, 2 parts oxygen together, you have hydrogen peroxide. With the introduction of this 4th element, or carbon, you have carbon. Carbon is cosmic glue that keeps all this stuff together. Carbon is the only atom that can bind with itself and create all of the millions upon billions of molecules that make up our cosmic reality. That same glue, on a cosmic level, is what created African folk on the earthly level. To study biology and not study melanin is equivalent to studying auto mechanics and not being taught what gasoline does for a car. You don't even know how the car runs. You know what it's made of, but you don't know what makes it function. If they taught our children, no matter what cultural background they were from, about melanin, they would have to teach them another principle of life, of which they're not willing to do. And that would be white supremacy is an illusion. In fact, remember we talked about the 4 hydrogen atoms, creating 1 helium atom, creating light and heat energy? There's something else that this fusion creates, and it's called a free radical. A free radical is a dangerous thing because it's nature out of control. If that free radical is something wrong with something good, because bringing those hydrogen atoms together, creating light heat energy was a good thing, but there's a little piece of a bad thing. If that is true in the sun, then let me make another analogy on the earth. When we were fused to create organic life that became humanity is a good thing. The free radical is the European. That's the bad thing.
Yeah.
The European is what happens to a good thing going bad. It is equivalent in your body to what makes cancer. Let me break it down to you. The European is the cancer of the human family.
Make that rain, bro.
Don't believe me, and I say don't believe me. Just watch how he acts. Because the idea is that if you tell something to somebody and they believe it, they haven't taken time to think for it themselves. Just observe the way in which they conduct themselves. And I'm not saying this in the sense that we all do the very best. There's good and bad in all things. But something happens to you when you're in the ice. And as I quoted our brother Dr. Jeffries, I do have to pay homage to my brother who's sitting in the back. Give our brother Dr. Leonard Jeffries. He taught me that. And so we have to understand this, brothers and sisters. Melanin is a serious component to the biology that we have to learn. It is a serious component to the astronomy that we have to learn. We have to study melanin. We have to understand its purpose, its reason, its function, what it does for us. We have to understand the difference between skin melanin and neuromelanin, which is melanin in the brain, and what it does. See, because as an African people, I tell folk, don't get into a mixed room and start asking people, did you hear? Because those little hairs in your inner ear that's seated in melanin. Well, to put it like this, it's like it's the difference between an AM radio and a satellite radio. Black folk pick up more stations.
Right.
And so when you're in a mixed room, don't talk about did you hear that, did you see that, did you smell that? Because the melanin within you allows your sensual perceptions to activate at a higher rate. Magnify. And when it doesn't do that, it's because you've allowed an outside force to convince you that you're crazy when you open yourself up to the ancestral line. Every human being born is born with every possible thing they will ever need in their life to know. Again, going back to the idea of what is called the Akashic Chronicles. That comes out of India. But India got that from Africa. The Africans called it the Nun. This is written. I've been getting interested in a lot of the writings that is out on astrophysics and a lot of different things. Since I've been introduced to the Shabaka stone, it became very interesting. And I started reading works, some of the authors of people like Irvin Laszlo and Stephen Hawkins and Ryan Green. And I mean, I could go through the line of these so-called scholars that are said to know. And you know, the sad thing is they miss so many important points. Because all you gotta do is go into the index, go into the end of the book, go into the index, and look up Africa. Look up Egypt. And if they don't reference that, they're not talking about too much. And you don't have to prove it to them. All you got to do is understand it for yourself, because we spend too much time trying to validate what we know to be true with them. And quite frankly, if you try to validate something with someone who has invalidated you, you're wasting your time, because had they any interest in you, they wouldn't have invalidated you in the first place. So the time you spend trying to validate yourself with the people who are invalid themselves. Because, you know, when you go to California, you ask the indigenous people who the illegal alien is, you're going to get a different answer than when you turn your TV on and try to figure out who the illegal alien is. There is only one illegal alien in America. And yet we'll watch a situation and we literally will believe, oh yeah, they're illegal aliens. They're taking jobs from us. Ain't no job for you or them. Once we understand this, the reason why I'm saying this is because these are things that I think as a people we have to ingrain within ourselves. And we have to start from that perspective on. We have to understand that our ancestors have left enough. With all that's been destroyed, there's been quite a bit destroyed, no doubt. But with what remains is so powerful. We can begin to do again what our ancestors did. This is another concern, because sometimes we spend so much of our time trying to go back and bring that forward, not bad, but don't get caught up thinking that if you can't get it, that you can't do it again. Because the same brilliance that was in them is in us. We can do it again. We can look at the Shabaka stone. And we can decipher exactly how the ancient world said the world came into being. We can take the principles of biology and chemistry, and we can see that within the pyramid text. We can look at the coffin text, and we can decipher clearly where our ancestors were coming from. And despite and in spite of all of those interesting, difficult for them, but not for us, perceptions of their world, we can understand what they were talking about when they talked about the waters of Nun. The waters of Nun that they use a pictograph as two waves of water. Okay? That embodies, in today's science, what they call the singularity, which is the atum, and the string theory, of which they're so proud of. Saying that they invented something. They didn't invent anything new. That existed in ancient Kemet, and they documented it. We have it primary source. I have the Shabaka stone. I made copies of the Shabaka stone. It was stolen from Africa and brought to the British Museum. I went to the British Museum, I made photographs, I got copies. They said to me, you don't have a right to make photographs like that. I said, well, you don't have a right to steal it. So you steal hot property, I come in your house, take a picture of it, and you telling me I'm illegal. Well, you should be arrested for stealing it in the first place.
On the real side.
The Aten text. A text found on the western wall of a vizier coming out of the 18th dynasty known as Ay. A-Y. Now, that was a recopied version of other documents that paid homage and tribute not to the sun, not to Ra, not to Amun, but to the light and heat energy that came from Ra. With the mythology or the analogy that that sun is like an eye that looks at its children and creates life. What an analogy our ancestors gave us. What a story they gave us. To understand on another level. But it's like when we say that our children have problems learning, that they have dyslexia. Dyslexia is not a problem. It's just another way of knowing something. This society says if you can't read, see, you make money with reading because you sell books. But if you're a visionary person, if you get information through visuals, you can't sell that. You also differentiate learning, which stops people from making money. If you stop them from making money, then all of a sudden dyslexia is no longer a curse, but it is a blessing. We really should be developing ways in which to teach our children who we say have dyslexia. We need to find where their genius really is. Because you're going to find that it might be in music. I asked a musician, brilliant brother named Onaje Allen Guns. I asked my brother Onaje, I asked him, when you dream, do you dream music? Because musicians dream music. Artists dream in pictures. We're so caught up in script. Nothing wrong with script. We should learn how to read. But it is not the only way in which we show how literate we are. Because literacy is not writing and reading. Literacy is the ability for you to show other people what you know. You can draw a picture, and that's literacy. You can compose a music, and that's literacy. You can do a dance, that's literacy. Our system holds our children into a way of learning that says, this is what a genius is, because this is the only way my shallow mind can perceive how great you are. Because anything past my shallow mentality, I can't follow you. It's like when I was doing my master's degree, I wanted to do my master's degree with a man by the name of Robert July from Hunter College. And when I went to him, I told him that he was the one that did African history. And I told him he was going to be my supervisor because they wouldn't let Professor Clark be my supervisor. Because they said he was in the Black Studies department and I was getting my master's in history. So it had to be someone from history. So Robert July, a man of European descent, had to become my supervisor for my master's thesis. So when I went to visit him, he told me, well, what do you want to do it on? I said, I'd like to do something on the decipherment of the Shabaka stone in Medu Neter. He said, well, how can you do that when you don't read Medu Neter? I said, I do read Medu Neter. He said, well, I don't, so you can't do it. Okay, well, that's your shortcoming. You're supposed to be the expert. You can't even. Well, that's the position that William Leo Hansberry was in when, back in the day, when he was attempting to get a PhD in African history. Ernest Houghton of the Peabody Museum, who worked with William Leo Hansberry, said that William Leo Hansberry couldn't get a PhD in African history because there was no one that had more knowledge than him. So no one could supervise him because even PhDs didn't have the knowledge that William Leo Hansberry had of it. And again, this is sometimes the problem that we find ourselves in, and I think that our children find themselves in the classroom because a lot of times our children are more intelligent than the teacher in front of the classroom. And so it becomes a problem when the student is smarter than the teacher because then you make the teacher feel a little insecure. And so all of a sudden, I think we need to call someone in to evaluate that child. And then we're going to put them in what they call special ed. We have to understand who it is we are as a people. And we have to understand the primary source and what has been laid down to us by our people that we can pick up and begin to look at. And we have to start to begin our own educational institutions, and the ones that exist we have to begin to support. And in saying this, I would be remiss if I did not bring attention to our system clean. No. The leader of the sanctifier. Her students who walk me up. Because it would be remiss not to do that because I don't want to talk about a school that's run by an African-centered mindset and not at least identify that you can sometime either this evening or some other time visit the school, talk to the sister, how can I support you, in what way can I do this? This is what we have to start to do. We don't have to reinvent the wheel, but if a sister has something, let's start to think of having our children go there. Let's start thinking about any way, whether it be, because you see, I'm going to tell you something. Our institutions need money. You know, I know people say that's the root of all evil. And, you know, the idea of wages of sin. But like the brothers say, wages pay the rent.
Yeah.
And too many times, great ideas go under because we do not financially support them. Yet our churches get 10% of what you make. And sometimes more, and you happy. Nothing wrong with that. There we go, walk away, watch out. Nothing wrong with that, that's your business. Look, I don't have nothing to say. I know in the back of my mind what I'm saying, but I respect all people's right to do what they like to do. But I find it interesting that we can open up a church and a liquor store on almost every block. And both institutions deal with spirits. Yet when it comes time to develop a school, then all of a sudden, we have a problem with the money. So I encourage you to reach out to these types of institutions and the institutions that you know and just ask. I ask also that you put aside parts of your money for the vendors that are in the street. Those that are in the block, whatever it is that they're selling, if we just put a little bit of something aside, throw it to them, give it to them. Get their wares all along Flatbush, all along Fulton, all along 125th Street, in Queens, wherever our vendors are, support them. Maybe you don't have enough right away to do something, but put a little bit aside and say, well, this is for that brother, that's for that book, or the DVD, or whatever it is. Support them. These are the little things that we can start to do that's real for our community. Because all this theory has its place, but unless we start practicing, really start practicing, Freedom Retreat. Wow, what an idea. What an idea. And as I look around, I see the brothers that give up their time, the sisters that give up their time to spend with the children, and the children that go to the Freedom Retreat. You know, the times that I've gone up there, you know, it's there for us.
Yeah.
What are we going to do about that? Are we just going to let it go by the wayside, and then when it goes to the wayside, we say, well, you know, we got it. And we've been doing it for a number of years. And the way I know how old it is because it was born the year that my son was born. And my son Heru is turning 14 tomorrow. So that's how long I know this has been consistent. Brothers and sisters, these are real things that we can start to do for our community. This is really a curriculum. A curriculum is far more than just sitting down in a room and learning something. It's about putting in motion a dynamic action that makes things happen. There's a word in ancient Kemet, heka, which is defined by them as being magic, but to African people it's defined as will. To will something. Our ancestors on the plantation willed their freedom, and they got it. Attorney Alton Maddox willed a camp, a retreat for our children, and he got it. Marcus Mosiah Garvey taught us, rise up, you mighty race, you will accomplish what you will. We have examples of this throughout us. And the more I study our history, the more I fall in love with us. Because we're such a wonderful, powerful people. And we really are. When I think of all the things that we may have been exposed to, and in spite of that, still we rise. I remember Dr. Richard King was talking about the ideas of all the different human beings that would rise. Dr. Diop, in his book, Civilizational Barbarism, talks about the beginnings of humanity in Africa, and he called it Australopithecus robustus. And then Australopithecus robustus created itself, brought itself to a higher level, and then came Australopithecus gracile. And then what the human family did was so powerful and so real in the development of tools. Australopithecus gracile rose up and became Homo habilis, human of ability, the tool maker. The human that looked and ate a watermelon. Yeah, I like watermelon.
Oh, yeah.
I'm not ashamed of watermelon.
No, I love it.
It's the most perfect food you can eat.
Yes, sir.
I don't care. I eat watermelon, spit the seeds out.
I love you, Dr. Ham.
Because I follow my ancestors, because they spit the seed out, and all of a sudden, they saw another one grow.
That's right.
And then Homo habilis began to think and say, you know something? If I were to put my finger in the ground and then purposely put the seed in the hole, I would cut down the amount of time it took for the earth to engulf the seed. Get watermelon quicker. And then Homo habilis said this. He said, well, wait a minute. My finger get tired after a while. So if I took a stick and dug a hole, then I could put a hole, and I could put more, because after a while my finger hurt. But if I used a big stick, I could do a whole lot of holes. Plant more seeds. Get more watermelon quicker. Feed a lot of other people. Homo habilis then said, but you know, if I took 3 sticks, put them side by side, stuck them in the ground, I could do it 3 at a time. Then he said, if I took 3 and then I dragged it along the ground, I could put seeds all along there. You see what Homo habilis is doing? The human of ability. The better you eat, the better you think. The better you think, the better you eat. And what began to happen was a relationship between as above, so below. You began to study the heavens. You began to learn the secrets of the earth. And then what happened was miraculous. Homo habilis, who walked a little hunched, began to slowly erect. So that now, instead of always looking this way, they began to look that way, and then they perceived what the future held. So Homo habilis began to become Homo erectus. When Homo erectus stood up straight, there was a direct line of the cerebral spinal fluid from head top to shoe stop. That began a more perfect movement of the cerebral spinal fluid that allowed this human to think better, to be able to formulate better. And what began to happen was that the relationship of the light and heat energy began to go into the pineal gland of this human and sent the electricity through the body that began to create a relationship that the head and the thinking process began to change. And it changed to the point where Homo erectus began to travel around the world. The evidence of African life starting in Africa is the fact that the first 3 forms of humanity can only be found in Africa. Australopithecus robustus, Australopithecus gracile, and Homo habilis can only be found in Africa. And there's such a gap between habilis and erectus, it didn't happen overnight. This erectus began to travel, the first human to travel. This, as they traveled, they came in contact with things that took Homo erectus and morphed them into a thinking human, which Dr. Diab calls Homo sapiens. Homo sapiens began to think on levels that rose up to higher levels, and then Homo sapien got so deep with his thought, Homo sapien became who we call Homo sapiens sapien, creative thinking man, or human. And don't let them tell you that, yeah, life started in Africa, but it perfected itself in Europe. Because there's evidence of every wave of Africans going into Europe, because whoever brought the Aurignacian tool making was the one that brought civilization into Europe, and that can be traced to Africans. In fact, the only real remnant of Europeans is the fact that we do believe that some Homo sapiens and some Homo sapiens sapiens live side by side.
Yeah.
Homo sapiens are Neanderthals. And the reason why they act the way they act is they still got a little bit of that caveman in them.
Yeah. Right.
Dr. Richard King tells us that in Africa, in many parts of Africa, as they related to nature, there were some Africans that raised themselves to such a level of thinking that Homo sapiens sapien became Homo perfectus. which is a seventh form of humanity, that took thinking to a whole nother level, that was able to come one in unicity with their God. Which was why the Creator created us in the first place, because all your holy books will tell you that God knew not himself, so he created creations in order to know who God was. If that be true and Africans reflected on themselves, then they would be, who I told you before, who you are, who we are, because we are God having a human experience. We are the God force. And how you honor your God is how you honor each other.
That is true. Absolutely.
So on one level, you're talking about how you love God, and then on the other level, you're blowing up your neighbor. Or you're saying that God told you to blow up. God don't tell you to blow up people. Now, I'm not saying that there's not a time when Malcolm must come up out of here. And that you speak in the language that you're spoken to. But even that, in ancient Kemet, was known as Heru Kuti. Heru Kuti is the righteous warrior. Heru is the inheritor of the earth. Heru Kuti is a righteous warrior who does battle with evil. And so, we wrap all this up by saying that we are the best of the best. We are Homo perfectus. We are that essence that can learn from all the other things that, because I always believe that Europeans do have a purpose on this planet.
Oh, yeah.
They do. Their purpose is to teach us that the highest of the high can fall by the lowest of the low when we forget who we are. We must stop fighting amongst ourselves.
Oh, yeah.
Dr. Clark taught us the only difference between a Puerto Rican, a Dominican, a Jamaican, a Haitian, a North Carolinian, a Bostonian, Chicagoan is a both sides.
Right on.
Somos uno. We're one people. Different languages, but we're one people. Whether we embrace it or not, whether we accept it or not, you are what you are. You can run, but you can't hide.
Right.
It is what it is. Brothers and sisters, we shall overcome by any means necessary. We are a mighty people who will rise by the will of our wills, because Bob Marley has taught us that no one can curse who Jah is blessed. We are blessed. Okay.
Let's give Brother Howard a round of applause. I'm pulling a Biaba for that wonderful presentation, and we hope we can have him again. Brother Jeffries, would you like to say a few words to us? And remember, Brother Coleman has his DVDs in the back.
Hotel brothers and sisters, let's give the sister a round of applause. Scaring us to death. But you see how resilient we are? You take a little tumble and then you rise. But certainly I'm glad to be here. And certainly with my brother, I had to come all the way from Jersey and stop all the stuff we're doing. My wife tried to, but she's been working so hard at reorganizing our life and the house, etc. So she just couldn't run out as quickly as I could. But we wanted to let you know that we appreciate what you're doing. We love you, and we're all family. So I'm certainly glad that our brother Clemson Brown, who has captured everything, and I hope that we can get it transmitted so we can get it in our hands. Did I hear somebody say amen, Clemson? Amen. So, first of all, I want to say thank you. When my wife and I were here celebrating with you the opening of Kwanzaa and also celebrating our 43rd anniversary. Africans were very generous. The weather was bad, etc. But when I started adding up those envelopes, it got nice. And it was over $1,000. So thank you all. We do so much African work that we need that type of support because we're supporting schools in Ghana, in the Caribbean, Brazil, and of course our work here in the U.S. So again, we want to say thank you, but we need the continuous support because our work does not stop. It continues. And I just got a call from Ghana. I said, well, next week I'll send some. That's the school we send $1,000, $1,500 to support. $1,000, $1,500 will support 40 kids to go to school. And then when we go to Ghana in the summer, those kids are there, their families there thanking us. That's for school fees. So you'd be surprised what we can do with a little bit of money we have. You know, $1,000 operating like a Negro means you can get 4 pairs of sneakers. Operating like an African, you can serve and help 40 students go to school to try to get their minds together. But we've been blessed to have an extraordinary brother transmit the enormous growth that he's experienced. I describe these last 50, 60 years from 1945 to now as the Great Awakening. And certainly, he represents the generations under me that are pushing this awakening to higher levels. So I'm just glad just to be here to catch even any little word or two that he was putting forth. In 2 weeks, not this Saturday, but next Saturday, Dr. J. Nana Kwekuchwa Ajaman II will have arrived at 71 years young. 71 years, picnic, African style. And as you know, I always celebrate my Mother's Day, my Earth Day. So I've celebrated this whole year, and it's been a glorious year. Now that I've made it to 71, we'll have a weekend celebration next week. And I think the 19th, I'll be with Alton and the family in the evening. But in the early evening or late afternoon, we'll be at Clark House. And we'll be celebrating Dr. J's 71st birthday. In Jersey, we'll be celebrating it on the 21st. So there'll be several venues that we will be celebrating. Throughout the year, we'll have monthly activities or bi-weekly activities dealing with our growth and our consciousness. One of the things that we have to have, and Booker knows this, brother, forgive me for not giving you your African name. Give it to me again. Kaba. Oh, I like that. Kaba sounds good. We have to have support for the institutions. Sister McLean is doing a great job, but she doesn't have the support to manifest the greatness that she's doing in touching our children's heart and soul. We have to figure out a way of raising money so that it relieves her of worrying every day. Do you know what it is when you have to worry every day whether your door is going to stay open, whether you can maintain the teacher, whether you can get the books, etc. We have to find a way of creating wealth so that we can support the institutions. Every day I go through hell and heaven dealing with these women in New Jersey who have that complex of schools and institutions, women in support of the Million Man March. Because they have been so successful that white folks intend to snatch what they have done. You can't have this type of success. Where did you get this vision? Where did you get this ability to sustain yourself and carry on like this? And so they're working night and day to snatch those institutions that they put together. But I'm on the board. So even if I have to sacrifice everything I got to keep them afloat, they're going to stay afloat. And the institutions that they build, the biggest institution is a block off of Central Avenue in Newark, New Jersey. I was born on Central Avenue. You know, my grandfather's house that I own is a block off of Central Avenue. And so for these women to have created an institution of African learning, I have to support them. But we've got to find the magic of raising money to support each other. Clark House It's a shame to have an institution like that, where it's a base named for Dr. John Henry Clark, housing the Board of Education of people, Board for the Education of People of African Ancestry, having the vision of Regent Adelaide Sanford to create it, having the support of important people like Una Mosek, who we've forgotten, even Reverend Butts and his good mind of support, and of course Gil Noble and Marcus Garvey, brother, Julius Garvey, and Joseph Fleming, my great attorney. All of us are together. Betty Dodson, of course, and her family. But we're still scrounging for money to pay the telephone bill, to repair the roof, to keep that open. And we should not be in that situation, except as Kaba was trying to say, we don't save. We don't know what saving is. When money comes into our hands, we've already spent it triple time. We are the most consummate consumers of garbage in the world. The $1 trillion black men and black women of America, if they became an African, using that wealth to create, could transform their whole global family. So we have to have a mission in terms of how do you use wealth? And then also how do you control and manage it? And then also how do you keep the predators away from it? Africa is such a beautiful place and such a rich place that predators are thinking about how do we get it, keep it from Africans. Right. You're not going to get a richer place in the world than the Congo. But it's in utter and complete chaos because the African mine of the Congo, which was one of the first scientific mines noted by science, the Ishango bone, going back 10,000 years or so. Africans using mathematical formulations, etc. And they found it on a bone carved out. And so we have the ability, but if you've been programmed against yourself, no matter how much ability you have, no matter how much potential you have, you can't make it operate for you. And they program us through the educational process, through the cultural process, that has us worshiping white folks instead of understanding appreciation and worshiping ourselves as we should. So UAM is about all of that. I'm trying to be about all of that. Brother Kaba and his family about certainly my partner, Queen Mother, Donna Tapvideo, also called Dr. Roslyn Jeffries, is about all of that. In fact, well, we've got to hook it up. We got to keep it as a family affair. We got to help it build institutions, etc. So those of you who want to keep honoring me and the work that I'm doing, which is the work of Dr. Clark and Dr. Ben and all those who went before us, we will be gathering at Clark House next Saturday. We'll be there between 4 and 8. That's before we leave to go to Alton at the Cotton Club to be with the family and to support what our brother's doing. And those of you who wish to be a part of the seminars on economic development and systems analysis, call me at the college, leave your name and number, and we'll get back to you. 212-650-8651. 212-650-8651. If you lose it, just call the college and ask for Dr. Jeffries, and they'll give you my number. And a brother just called me, and his name is Kevin Jones or something like that. And he says, Dr. Jeffries, I want to be a part of your seminars on critical thinking and systems analysis, and me and my daughter. So what Alton's got started with those seminars and those workshops is spreading around. And so we need to continue it. So, brother, I just came and busted my back. Would have been here earlier, but I made a mistake of calling Los Angeles and speaking to Queen Nzinga. She's the president of ASCAP, and we hadn't talked in a month. And so I wanted to tell her I'm trying to get to UAM, and she had more to say. I'm trying to get to UAM, she had more to say. And so I just couldn't put the phone down and run here. But as soon as I got in my car, I zipped over here just to stand with you. But I need to sit at your feet. Because see, these youngsters under us have taken this knowledge. And his brilliance is that he can relate to PhDs and great scientists, but he has the genius of relating to our young people. And that takes a special understanding to be able to translate and excite young people into moving with this knowledge. And in the Bronx, he was a master teacher in getting the knowledge out to our people. So I'm glad to see his growth and feel it and to be a part of it. I just want to thank all of you. I want to thank my sister for stepping in. But don't be stepping down here. These people don't have no insurance to cover Africans. So when you fall with the white folks where you can get $1 million or two. You know? Thank you all for coming out and being supportive of your family.
Thank you, Dr. Jeffries. Okay, Minister Brown is going to close us out, but I just want to make one announcement. The International African Ministries Ubuntu, IAMU, Professor Kaba will be speaking there on Sunday, January 13th. Close us out.
Brother Gates, how you doing? All right, my brother.
Thank you very much. Again, let us give Dr. Jeffries and Brother Kaba a hand. Our Wapa. And don't forget to visit him at his table in the back. Let us all stand. Hold somebody's hand. Let the spirit flow from hand to breast, and from breast to breast, and heart to heart. Feel it. Feel one another. Brother Kaba was right. We are unified. We're one entity. And he mentioned Dr. Oyibo and the work of Professor Oyibo. We really need to put that on our hearts and minds because the universe is working. I've been watching what's happening around Obama. I really don't understand it. I'm not sure if he understands it either. And I'm not sure anybody else understands it because the universe works in some strange and mysterious ways. But who knows? Maybe Obama will reach out to Professor Oyibo and we'll have a new world. That's really all that needs to happen, is that the funding that can bring forth that institution and set that institution in a way that we can begin to materialize what the universe has brought to us through his work. So we have the ability to will things into being. Up, you mighty people, you can will what you will. What we will, we can bring into being. Because we are the universe. So repeat after me. We're an African people who gave the world its first understanding, its first knowledge, the foundation of all knowledge, of mathematics, of science, of religion. The greatness that we see is ours. And we have come to claim it. Up, you mighty people. Up, you mighty people. You can be all that you dream and see. God bless you.